Nice.
People really annoying because of work.
Huh?
Because I'm going away and go back and stuff like that.
The lighting.
Do you have a link?
Not so good.
Can you send me that link?
How do I send you the link?
It's really tasty. Like really, the camera is really bad, you know.
Yeah.
But try to eat really tasty, really amazing.
Dude, I don't know how to share the link.
Huh?
I'm trying to just find my. Just search on YouTube takoyaki stream or something. I call it this.
No, like, is it bad to have music or?
Huh?
Is it bad to have music?
Oh, it's good. I don't know. Should be fine.
It's really tasty, right? Oh yeah, it's live. Yeah, look.
Nice.
And we should spend effort making sure that people are equipped with the knowledge.
But how do you get like link?
You can share. Just click the three dots, and there should be something like you can share stream.
Okay, I'll just send it. But it's like no viewer. I like it. But we can put this essentially Abby.
Oh man. It's hot. Yeah, it's hot. It's good though. Maybe we need it higher. Maybe we need to put the last one on.
What are you expecting from watching?
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. You need to add like the tags, and then people can find your video. But like, they can't see the food. Oh well. Let's see, tags. Maybe we need to change the position.
It's different. It goes like musk.
You need to put more oil or something.
Yeah, you can put more because like now it's like
I poured it first and then I wiped it.
It's all come alive. Now I'm in my mind. It's all 이 생각이 나지만 정신 차리겠거니 하고 말지 약이 없네 이독한 감기 It's all good, okay I'm never fine, never fine, never fine, yeah Never fine, never fine, never fine, yeah No, 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 no 약속거리고 버리듯이 너를 별림이 없었음에 Okay, okay, okay It's okay, okay, okay It's okay, okay, okay 어차피 소용없는 짓이지 마 내게 할 짓은 못하지 마 It's okay, okay, okay Yeah 말라지 않아 no 날 보지 않아 don't dare 내 멋처럼 맘에 또 어떤 가란 말에 훔쳐기거린 너의 눈은 이제 보내달란 듯이 하긴 못해 나는 넓어진 내 방에 차 다시 돌아가고 싶지 않아서 거운적거려 우리 진짜로 정말 가끔씩 그리운 거니 또해 이럴 거면 왜 그랬어 왜 그랬어 You know it's not good Try on just foolish 잠깐 때리는 빗물이 괴롭히는 말
Octopus is good.
That is, unless it's them of art, right? I think first duties of
Yeah. Octopus is
all of
tight.
us is to ensure the authenticity of our communities. Yes.
But do you think you should be held responsible if somebody builds something, if there's seclusion, or if there's somebody who is it's a Russian, it's a bot that's online? Do you think you should be on the line, or this is just a site you offer for people to exchange ideas?
Reddit can be held responsible, and we do take our responsibilities here incredibly seriously.
Thank you.
From China or Russia?
No.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
No, I'm not.
It's a custom.
I'm not popular, man.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I want to thank you and the
Well, how
ranking
do we
member
bend your email
for the
from?
meeting today.
What? Huh?
What happens if you send like link to the something?
If I could,
I'm curious about what.
I'd like to echo
What time does
Most of
the
my
Mars
friends are
landing
working.
rover, guys?
appreciate the
It's
fact
in Canada.
you created this platform
Isn't it?
to a large extent.
Huh?
You
35
let us
minutes,
know
okay.
So that all individuals
In the office we should do this.
can have a shot at the American dream.
We should
That's
charge money.
Yeah.
I do want to ask
One ball on you.
a lot's been said
You
about
better in
about
the
the situation
Yeah.
that occurred in late January.
You cannot even run.
My question to you is, how do you misjudge
Okay, I'll make
your
more.
capital requirements to prevent people from being able to trade during that period in January?
Thank you, Congressman. I wouldn't say we misjudged our capital requirements. This was a 1 in 3.5 million occurrence event, one that had never been seen before in capital markets. And we had to play this by the book. Robinhood Securities made the decision that we did so that we could remain in compliance with our regulatory capital and deposit requirements. Unfortunately, it required us to restrict the buying of these securities for Thursday and limit it to some degree on subsequent days until additional capital came in that allowed us to relax the restrictions.
It was Robinhood's mistake, though, correct?
Well, Robinhood owns what happened, certainly, and we need to make sure that it doesn't happen again. But Robinhood Securities had limited options with how to address this, and I fully support the team in making the decision that they did, and I believe they did the right thing and the only thing.
I realize you said at the beginning that you're privately held. With that said, Is your primary source of revenue from the order flow payments that you receive from some of the players we've talked about today?
That is correct, Congressman. Payment for order flow is one of our largest revenue sources.
Is it the largest?
It's the largest, yes.
Now, in your testimony, in your written testimony, oral testimony, you talked about the settlement period and what probably be capable of doing in real time instead of T plus 2, maybe the T plus 1. If we had real time settlement with the situation that did occur in January, would that have been preventable? In other words, that wouldn't have happened if we had real time settlement.
Congressman, if we were to have real-time settlement, and of course there's some implementation details that would govern this, there would be less of a need for collateral at clearinghouses because the cash and securities transactions would be exchanged in real time. So collateral for counterparty risk would be less necessary. So real-time settlement would lead to reduction, perhaps an elimination in some.
Oh, nice. Yeah, we could have added that. Are we cheaped out? Is Ryu Yan watching?
Who?
Ryu Yan?
I sent her the link, but
Ryu?
I sent her the link, but not seen it.
Oh.
Is it you need that read slow?
Yeah.
Even one day of session later, you can open.
The connection's not so good. But isn't it the server that's running it?
Yeah, but
I mean, anything I run in Impala is really fast.
I don't know. It's just not reading one day of data.
With Addy's massive query,
Yeah.
maybe that's why it's so big.
No, but
What are your thoughts about that as it relates to Reddit?
Do it separately.
I don't know.
Sure. So Section 230, I think, is a critically important law to the internet as we know it. And it was created, in fact, to protect a forum in the early internet for talking about stocks. Section 230, I think it's also important to point out, doesn't protect platforms or companies like ours from civil
Will
litigation.
after food.
So there are mechanisms for coming after companies like
Oh,
ours.
so eating dinner.
What it does protect is our ability to evolve the way we moderate our content, and in which we have done in many ways over the last decade.
Once time has expired. Mr. Gonzalez, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
All right, come on, let's get through this.
Speaker and ranking member.
Talk to DPV, DVP.
This is for Citadel. Mr. Griffin, in 2020, Citadel violated regulation, SHO, which governs short selling. Citadel is now involved in another short selling problem, and Robinhood routes half of its customers' orders to you. Robinhood halts buying on a position that you're long on, and you own the hedge fund that
I think we'll start putting the oil the
what is there to
second time.
prevent you
It's
from
like
taking
not as
advantage of that
heavy.
situation and making sure you profit off the
If we put
confusion?
the oil to fry
and
it
retail
after, it's
investors?
really heavy, man. Now it's not as heavy.
I'm trying to understand the question.
Yeah.
Hi, my name is STG.
Let me give it to you again. In 2020, Citadel violated regulation SHO, which governs short selling. Citadel is now involved in another short selling problem, and Robinhood routes half of its customers to you, in orders to you. Robinhood halts buying on a position that you're long on, and you own the hedge fund and the clearing broker. What is there to prevent you from taking advantage of that situation and making sure you profit off the confusion of retail investors?
So in no particular order, I just do not understand the reference to us owning a clearing broker. We do not own DTCC. We do not control DTCC.
I can't see the server.
We are not party to the discussion, dialogue, or demands between DTCC and Robinhood. So I do not understand the premise of the question, because we have literally nothing to do with DTCC other than being a member of DTCC for providing settlement services for us.
I cut it
and
then I
for
flip
doing
inside.
real-time trade affirmation
Stuff it
and
real
clearing.
good. Okay.
Like,
Citadel
then from outside,
Securities
just roll it. And then the
owes
half is
a
fine.
duty of best execution for
And then like try to put it, you know, because
every
we have like
order that
like,
comes from
outside
Robinhood.
something, right? So just
And I will tell
put it-
you that I'm incredibly proud of how
that's why we put
seriously
a lot, so that
my team takes
we
that
have
duty of
extra-
best
Oh.
so that
execution.
we can-
Some of the most earnest, hardworking,
like-
and thoughtful people that
it's
I've
not
ever met in my life
Even cooked the
work
outside yet.
on
I think.
our
Yeah,
retail
it's too high.
execution business here at
Is this
Citadel.
highest now?
Yeah.
take
I mean, the
great
ones in the
pride
middle
in
is
the
probably like
execution quality
So
that
like-
we
More
give
Yeah,
to
we can
each
maybe
and
the ones
every
on the outside are
trader,
like.
not only at Robinhood,
we can make
but
it
at
like
every single one of the
Thank you.
retail.
Yeah.
Thank you for your response, Mr. Gill.
Yeah,
I understand that you made your position known on GameStop as far back as 2019 and are lauded as a diamond hands hero by Wall Street bets community. Have you ever previously experienced or observed the type of restrictions Robinhood and other applications performed on January
Diamond hands
28th?
hero, boys.
Taking
DHH.
No, I have not.
Thank you. That's a good question. And Mr. Huffman, I'm not a Redditor, but I do understand the problems around social media and freedom of speech and the tightrope act that goes on where these intersect. In the near decade of Wall Street bets and subreddit, have they shown themselves to be exceptionally problematic, an exceptionally problematic form, or just one of the many eccentric communities that call Reddit home?
Congressman, I think your latter description is more accurate. They are an eccentric community.
harder. You can chop it.
But they're well within the bounds of our content policy. And though we do have
Eccentric,
difficult
nice way.
decisions to make here and there regarding specific
What?
communities, one of the things we look to first
Dude,
is
I stopped YouTubing.
whether the
man.
community is
I stopped YouTubing. I
trying
have
their-
like
putting their best efforts
less
to be a
than
good
50
citizen of Reddit.
subscribers, dude.
And towards that end,
No, but
we've had consistent
yeah.
communication with the moderators of
But
that
dude,
community. and
like,
they've been
what
doing
the
a
likelihood
fantastic
of them like being on YouTube?
Thank you. Well, the last
Like very
financial
low.
crisis was caused when we turned a blind eye to the bad practices of our financial
Maybe
institutions.
the algorithm
Perhaps today we're
it will
seeing a warning
favor the
about the
people if they
clearing
do it
clearing process,
consistently.
and I hope today
I
will
mean,
be
who types
a
it?
jumping off point
Like, you
for us
just
to
type
take a
like
hard look at our
Elon
markets
Musk.
and the practices of these
Cooking.
institutions.
Type Elon Musk.
In a two-day clearing process,
Type
the
GameStop.
liability
Type
risk
GameStop.
and potential financial stress limited trading, but in a key time in market and perhaps
This
in a
is
way
GameStop with
that
the-
materially
with the-
affected
yeah.
investors in these recent events. So I'm hoping that we all get to take a closer look at what is happening. With that, I yield back. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next on our list, we will have Mr. Hollingsworth for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman.
All right.
Mr. Griffin, I'm going to direct my question.
Oh, this dude
Gold.
definitely bought
specifically,
GameStop.
But I'm
I put
hoping to talk a little more
Gold.
philosophically about the market writ
Elon
large
Musk
rather than just
and
Citadel itself.
GameStop.
Certainly, there's been a significant amount of evidence supporting the advantages market makers offer retail investors. Through sophisticated
Oh,
infrastructure and high-speed
I
technology,
don't know what that
bid-ask
is.
spreads have decreased from
That's not
33
scaring
cents
me.
to less than a
Oh,
penny
yeah.
over the last 5 decades. And according
Dude's
to some
in the
research,
bathroom on his
retail
Robinhood account right
investors
now.
1.6 billion just in the first 6 months of last year.
It's not
alone.
watching.
None of our discussion after
always
this, the
one.
questions I'm going to ask
Pretty
are
fair.
intended to be pejorative to that reality.
maybe.
But I
It's
just
like
wanted
the
to pick your
accident,
brain,
yeah,
given
yeah,
your
no,
deep
it's not
experience
really
about some of the implications of off-exchange trading specifically. We've seen this year that off-exchange trading has eclipsed nearly 50% of all trading. Can you talk a little bit about what factors have contributed to off-exchange trading's growth versus on-exchange trading? Certainly, I want to talk about the concerns we may have as market participants about that. But first, just the factors that you think are driving that.
I think one of the
Yo,
most
Zonals, dude, thank you.
significant drivers of off-exchange trading is that exchanges are handcuffed in their ability to fulsomely compete.
Can you talk a little bit more about that? Is this just regulatory arbitrage?
It is, I hate the word because it has a negative connotation. I believe that the exchanges should have greater latitude in setting their tick sizes in the most liquid securities. That will allow order flow that's currently going to dark pools to go to exchanges and to receive better executions.
And
So let me just be very clear.
I think most
It's
Japanese people
not that
wouldn't
we
know how
want
to do it.
to
But
inhibit
you have to
dark
be
pools
working in a restaurant.
or market makers like Citadel from competing. is that we want to enable and empower
We should mix it
exchanges
well because I think
to
it's
be better
Better?
connected.
Yeah.
I started my career as a retail
all of these
investor
things is
in the day where I
like
used to spend
Yeah.
25
I know,
cents
before
a
I
day.
skipped it, I tried to mix a bit, but
I think
I know
Yeah.
the days you're referring to. We've come a long ways.
I remember those days too. It was insane.
The next step is to allow exchanges to be more competitive.
dude, this one is a shit.
Well, so I think you answered this question,
Monster.
but just to put a fine point on it, there is public policy work that needs to
I'm
be
trying
done
to
in order
form
to
it.
help resolve some of this
I know,
challenge
boomer,
that
boomer, boomer.
exists.
Not 25
Movement
cents, guys,
of
but they're
volume
never
from
mind.
on exchange to off exchange. That's incumbent upon us. It's incumbent upon regulators to find a better solution. Is that what you're saying?
Congressman,
Yo.
I'm saying that yes, it's
Someone-
legislators
someone
or
out
the
there?
SEC. I believe much of this can be done by the
Smart, right?
SEC as a policy matter.
Right.
Think of it as the next step forward.
It's also because there's a lot more people trading now, so there's a lot more volume
thank you
and
for
open
all of
interest
this.
going
Just-
on,
I
which
wanna
brings those
highlight
spreads
this
quicker
further.
or closer.
Can you talk about some of the challenges
Yeah,
or
what happened to that
deleterious
one?
impacts on the
I
market
moved
if
it in the
more volume is
Also
off
bad.
exchange versus more
I think this
versus
is not
lit
like not
trading?
how
Can you talk a little bit about why we should be concerned about that to make sure we all understand how important it is
Hey,
to
we
make
have
these
someone.
changes to empower, as you said,
Well, that's-
exchanges to be
because
better
it says someone.
competitors?
Oh,
Yeah,
there's
I think there are
two,
three
and then
salient
yeah.
points
yeah,
I'd
you
like
said
to
you have
make.
someone.
First,
Yeah.
price discovery is the most
I
important
think
part of our
you need
capital
a
markets
camera,
function.
proper camera,
Because
like,
price
The
discovery
laptop, it
combined
doesn't
with
look good,
liquidity
right?
people
fuels
can see
our
like what
free
how you're
enterprises.
cooking.
It's how companies raise capital. It drives down the cost of capital. The more trading on exchanges, the better the price
Can I
discovery
make the
we
quality
have.
better?
That is good
Just like
for our
automatically?
capital markets. The
Maybe
second is that dark pools are often.
I've got it ready to go, guys. I got it right here in case something starts
Business
happening, okay?
practices where they discriminate against one class of investors versus
Oh,
another.
actually, there was
I
someone
find it
before.
very
Now it's zero.
unsettling to
See?
see in any way
Oh,
prohibit
shit.
Maybe it's early.
discrimination
Really?
against
Maybe.
one group.
I
of
want a
investors
typo so bad.
benefit or at the
No one's
expense of
typing,
others
though. do.
in favor of our capital markets.
Huh? Because
We
don't
want our
talk
capital
something
markets to represent the values of our country.
No, man.
The third
Oh,
is that
maybe
the
because I'm
dark
playing
pools
GameStop in
themselves
the back.
create a level
Dude, this one
of
is.
concern and
I don't
apprehension
know.
Just-
Maybe
just
it's
about
to
the
get
fairness of our markets. And I believe that we should always be taking steps to
Yeah, I think it
advance
has to be.
public confidence and the confidence of
Mm.
retail investors and institutional investors that the United States capital markets are a fair place in which to transact business.
No, these are like it's dead.
Griffin, thank you for those answers, and I would call upon my colleagues to recognize the deep experience Mr. Griffin has in these
Maybe
areas and how
more
important
oil.
it is that we
Yeah,
take
could
the
be.
steps.
Like,
It's not frying the outside.
yeah, let's just eat it.
Let me take it out first, and then I put some oil. Okay, and then now try. I think it'll work.
Either via agency or via legislation to help empower exchanges to compete on a level playing field to make sure that create a public policy.
The gentleman's time has expired. Mr. Lawson, you're recognized
Yeah,
for 5
one
minutes.
Huh?
Welcome to
I'm waiting for the
the.
rover, guys. It's not there
takoyaki
yet. I've got the
stream.
thing up right here.
Member Henry for this forum today, and I want to thank the
Here you go.
Think people
Have the
will-
first. Oh,
Yeah, I think people will leave it.
no one saw that.
You don't have any like really like you don't have any subscribers.
Dude, I tried, man. I am not good at YouTube. Come on,
Malcolm
dude.
got their stimulus money. They were
Now
trying
I
to
feel
pay the
bad.
rent, trying to take care of the kids, and I don't want to.
Now I feel bad. I'm a
emergency
failure.
stimulus dollar. You know, that happened, that they, that people are running out
I
to
know
invest, their money. That's not
People would
the
just
norm.
join
My
because
question,
they find the
direct
public
to,
streams.
Really?
We can stream on Twitch.
Wall Street is supposed to.
I don't have a Twitch account actually.
To revenue.
Maybe we can try
and
Twitch
profit
over there.
fundamentals.
Is this my rep? No, I don't think so. My rep is Debbie Wasserman.
Hey,
They
type something.
Sorry, the person who reps my.
Sometimes we have two
about
people.
investing
Sometimes.
based on their fundamentals. And that this isn't an investment about making a profit.
Y'all
in
ever
that
made
way. It's about
takoyaki
making a
before?
profit to demonstrate that they
Look at those
can
fast
She used to be. I
hands.
don't know.
manipulate the system. And if not, better than
professionals, such as you
You have
said.
fast hands.
That's who reps the district I live in.
Professional.
And Wall Street was losing billions of dollars.
Yeah, see,
Melvin
now,
kept a betting
like,
against
it's forming a little bit, but I don't know, maybe not enough flour
Clearly, there is a manipulation.
to start. Not enough the gluten.
Within the system,
Not enough
and
gluten
inequality in
to form
American
the.
finance.
I'm sure.
Mr. Plunkett, do you believe that there is manipulation, distrust, and overall
Okay.
inequality within American
I will mix.
within American finance? And what do you believe
These two are bad.
the consequences for big guys
Yeah.
like yourself, but also little guys in this process?
Look at the difference
Thank you for the
in
question.
color.
I really can't speculate,
Colors.
in
Yeah.
terms of the broader system. I think, Melvin,
before it was
my
too
focus
full,
is
I
on running
cannot
a
mix
portfolio and building
So well.
a great organization and a strong team. I think some of the issues you speak about are much greater societally, and it's not really my area of expertise.
Okay, well, one of the things you guys have Series 67 license and everything, but these amateur investors don't have to go through those same standards. And because they do not have to
Diamond
go
hands,
through
baby.
those same standards, how are they able to go in and manipulate the market? Maybe someone that can answer over people who have been involved
Finance.
in
Palantir.
They're not going to be able to prove that they manipulated anything because it's just a bunch of guys on a forum talking. Now, if they can prove that there were institutions or, bad actors from firms going in there and doing it, that's different.
Today, the financial markets are changing. There's a lot of new players. I think they saw an opportunity, to drive the price of the stock higher. And today with social media and other means, there's the ability to kind of collectively do so. That was a risk factor that, up until recently we never seen. I think sometimes with retail investors, you think about, and they've been really adept at this, investing in the internet or software stocks or, ideas with big opportunities and they chase them because they believe in the fundamentals. I think this was very different in that a lot of the meme stocks, these were businesses with real challenges, but they exploited an opportunity, around short interest and the way that was approached. And I think,
I was up 10%.
us at Melvin will adapt, and I think the whole industry will
This
have
is
to
my
adapt.
lesson. If I hit the 10%.
I understand that, and so I guess from our standpoint, and I don't have much more time, but what do you
I still
recommend
have 2
to
weeks.
us to try to keep
I
letting
can
this
go
happen?
back up in 2 weeks. We'll see.
Look, I think to some degrees markets are self-correcting. I know, moving forward, stocks. I don't think you're going to see stocks with the kind of short interest levels that we saw, prior to this year. I don't think investors like myself want to be susceptible to these type of dynamics. I think there'll be a lot closer monitoring of message boards. There'll be software providers. We have a data science team that'll be looking at that. Whatever regulation that you guys come up with, certainly, we'll abide by, and I look forward to, helping, if you guys want to have future conversations about that.
Okay, thank you. And Madam Chair, my time is running out. So I
It's too much mayo.
Thank you very much. Mr. Gonzalez of Ohio, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Mayo.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to thank
6 minutes till they start and then 13 minutes until it lands, guys.
and also you, Madam Chair, for bringing us together. Mr. Tim, I'm going to start my questions with you by walking through a series of events that day in January, just to make sure we're all on the same page. So in your testimony, you mentioned that the automated deposit requirements from DTCC came in at 5:11 a.m. Eastern, and it showed a $3 billion deficit, correct?
Woo!
I believe that's correct, yes.
Thank you,
Take
Lino.
it first bite.
Okay. At that
There you
point, 5:11 a.m., did you have the liquidity to meet the additional $3 billion deposit requirement?
So
Looks like a Manning brother.
As we wrote in detail in my written testimony, there were a series of steps that the Robinhood Securities team took to
Replenishment time, sir. At that exact moment, did you have the liquidity for $3 billion? 5:11 a.m.
At that moment, we would not have been able to post the $3 billion in collateral.
Okay. So when you said, and you've said this multiple times, that you did in fact have the liquidity and you didn't have a liquidity problem, at that moment in time, that is not necessarily true, correct?
Ooh.
You had to take steps to get there.
Congressman, we did have to, the Robinhood Securities team had to work with our relevant clearinghouses to adjust the risk profile of the trading day in order to meet our collateral requirements.
Right. And in order to do that, your choice was to throttle trading to prevent your clients from being able to purchase in certain shares, correct?
That's correct. Robinhood Securities had to restrict buying in about 13 securities.
Okay. And if you had not been able to de-risk the profile or the portfolio, excuse me, you wouldn't have been able to raise the money, get the VAR requirement, the excess capital charge waived to de-risk the portfolio, then DTCC would have stepped in and liquidated the portfolio, correct?
It's going to happen this also in Germany.
I'm not sure
Thanks for
what the
being here.
exact, Congressman, what the exact steps that they would take if we weren't in compliance with the deposit requirements would be, but it would not have been a good situation for the firm or the customers.
So reclaim my time. So the letter that Ranking Member McHenry submitted for the record, I would draw everyone's attention to. I'll just read this. If a clearing member fails to satisfy a margin call, it exposes other clearing members to risk and can put NSCC out of compliance. In a case of non-payment, NSCC may cease to act for the clearing member and liquidate its unsettled clearing portfolio. So that was definitely in the cards. For my constituents who are Robinhood clients, what would this have done to their portfolio if it would have been forced liquidation as a result of missing the capital call?
They wouldn't have been able to get their.
Well, Congressman, if there was forced liquidation, at the very least, it would have resulted in a total lack of access to the markets for your constituents. Not just to the 13 securities that we restricted buying in.
Right, so this would have been an enormous catastrophe for Robinhood, correct? And the
That's
clients.
correct. And not just Robinhood, but the over 13 million customers that we serve.
Only one person will.
Yeah, and I think that's really sort of the crux of the issue. So in a sense, I love your company because it does, when correctly managed, provide investment opportunities for individuals who are currently frozen out of the markets for one reason or another. At the same time, though, I believe a vulnerability was clearly exposed in your business model and perhaps in the regime that governs your capital requirements. And we just can't live in a world where my constituents could have their shares liquidated without their consent because you all aren't able to make a capital call. I appreciate that you were able to ultimately satisfy it, but the amount of time you have from 5 a.m. to 10 a.m. to figure this out is scary for the company, and frankly, I care more about my constituents than anything, and scary for them. And so I hope we'll continue to look at that. Beyond that, though, I also hope that this hearing highlights a very real problem with our financial markets today and how they're accessed by everyday investors. Today, the Melvin and Citadels of the world, as well as major PE and VC funds, have access to the world's greatest investment opportunities on the planet, whereas the retail investor world, of which Mr. Gill is a great member, it doesn't, for lack of a better term, has access to an ever-diminishing set of investment opportunities. And so while we're debating these vulnerabilities, we're also serious about finding ways to expand access for Main Street investors. And with that, I yield.
The gentleman's time has expired. Mr. San Nicolas, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Good morning from Guam, Madam Chair. I've been with the hearing since 3 a.m. The sun is starting to come out here, but it's always a pleasure to be joining you in these very, very important hearings that you call for the American people. Thank you very much. I wanted to first begin by congratulating everybody who made money in the Robinhood trade. You know, you guys found a low float, low volume, massively shorted stock, and you guys squeezed it. And I think that investors like Mr. Plotkin, large money managers, probably doubled down on their short positions thinking that they're going to win. And in the end, the massive communication networks that we have these days rallied the small to beat the large. And that was absolutely something to behold. And Robinhood made that possible. Robinhood made that possible. Mr. Tenev, you mentioned in your testimony that you've secured $3 billion in funding to address the regulatory deposit requirement situation. That
guys, they're not actually showing.
Where did that $3 billion come from?
Thank you
They're showing
for that question. To be clear, we were in compliance with all regulatory net capital and deposit requirements without the additional capital infusion. It was simply to provide extra cushion, allowing us to unrestrict trading and be prepared for other black swan events that might happen in the future. The capital came from mostly existing venture capital investors that Robinhood already
It's
had.
about as legit as this hearing.
So basically, you had to further dilute your position in Robinhood in order to make sure that you secured all of the 3 million customers with that additional 3 billion.
That's correct.
It's not a fake landing.
Well, that's where I have a serious concern, Mr. Tennant, because not only was your business model designed to profit off of order flow, which caused you to take extraordinary risks in having 15 million customers and access to large margin trading that facilitated the GameStop situation. But you halted buys on that stock and you allowed sells in order to mitigate the capital requirement situation, and you materially benefited from it.
Not enough
You materially benefited from it because it reduced the amount that you would have had to go out and raise an additional capital in order to prevent these kind of crises from reoccurring. You took from your customers in order to minimize
Is that him or me?
3 billion from being larger than it probably would have been, because you wanted to protect your position. And that is very troubling. That is very troubling. It's very troubling that the model that you built and the risk that you took on resulted in that halt. And it's very troubling that that halt also materially benefited the existing shareholders and yourself by minimizing the amount of additional capital you had to raise in order to prevent that from happening again. You basically took from the shareholders in order to do that, and that's just I don't know what to say about that.
Oh, QS just
but
died.
I think that this, Madam Chair, presents a very serious situation where we need to ensure that companies are not taking advantage of customers in this way. Mr. Tennant, you're quoted as saying in this hearing, buying increases capital requirements, selling does not. So it was something that you knowingly did. It was something that you knowingly did. It was beyond just trying to protect the existing customers. And at the end of the day, while you had to raise an additional 3 billion, it minimized that from being a larger sum. We have customers who purchased the stock who are now bag holders after
that's not my smoke alarm, guys. It's his.
Couldn't continue going up with buying, with additional buying.
Some noise.
And that was willful. That was intentional. So
chat.
I'm glad, Madam Chair, that we called this hearing. I'm glad that we're able to put these things on the record. And I'm just very concerned with the implications of this. And I really hope that at the end of the day, those bag holders get a lot more than an apology.
I'm disappointed. So you have a lot of
Nah, man. I couldn't get my YouTube channel up in the air.
Huh?
My YouTube channel didn't work. I only have like 5 videos or something. I tried, man. All right. All right. I'm gonna kill the live stream.
What?
Not yet. Okay, fine.
I don't know.
Only one person. Maybe it's Rulin. Is it? Is it Marco Pavlovich? Did you share the link with him?
No.
Why not?
Just put in the trivial rundown.
He would support us no matter what. Pavlovich. Do you think Sabatini likes takoyaki?
Yeah, that is.
Italian people eat octopus, right?
I showed him picture.
Just want to move to the inside. I'm getting pretty full.
Oh man, we sell like tomorrow.
What?
We sell tomorrow.
5 more rounds? Okay. This one is too soft. I can't.
I think we should have like put more flour.
More flour?
I guess.
Yeah. Make more thick. You know, everyone liked them takoyaki. Thick.
Can't stop like making like,
Oh?
since you don't know
What?
beer is like talking about.
Yep. It's what I do all the time.
Cruise to the benefit of pension plans.
Pension plans?
ETFs of other pools of institutional lending that participate in the securities lending market. And keep in the back of your mind, when a bank lends money to a business, that business may turn around and lend money to its suppliers.
Huh?
Just because, in some sense, somebody can on-lend what they bought doesn't necessarily mean something has gone wrong in the chain itself.
Would you see that as an area ripe for regulatory adjustment, or do you think that that's not a problem?
I think if we were to think about
Landed on the moon, boys.
priorities to make our capital markets better, this doesn't make the top.
On Mars?
Rover.
There's some rover
Thank
on
you.
Mars.
Thank you. Despite the intense
They sent like
volume
a
and
rover to
exposure
Mars.
presented
Sorry,
in
I'm
the market,
tired.
the broader infrastructure of our financial markets has performed very well, I believe. My concern, like those of my colleagues, is that forging ahead with new regulations at this point will be harmful and have
Not connected
unforeseen
yet. We will after
consequences.
we'll invite you too.
The few moments that I have left, Ms. Schultz, can you speak to what the potential
needs help
dangers
with
are of increased regulation to retail investors?
That's going to take me more than 12 seconds, but
That's what he.
there's a lot of potential for unintended consequences here, and increased regulation can drive retail investors out of the market. It can have them have less good prices.
Sorry not to give you more time. Maybe one of my colleagues will give you a chance to complete that. I yield back.
Thank you very much. Next, we will have Ms. Axney for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairwoman, and thank you to the witnesses for being here today. I just want to quickly follow up with a question my colleague, Mr. Foster, asked earlier to you, Mr. Tenev. You said that Rule 606 reports detail the arrangements you have with firms like Citadel.
3
However,
minutes,
those
guys,
only
to get out of your
detail
positions
the
before end
payments
the
you
day.
receive. Are you saying that you're prepared to publicly disclose the detailed terms of your payment for order flow with Citadel and other market makers?
Closing.
Thank you for the question, Congresswoman. The 606 reports do publicly detail the payment for order flow arrangements we have with Citadel Securities and our other market makers.
Bitcoin end of the day.
Or to buy the dip.
Okay, well, I'll look forward to seeing those details then. Will you make sure that you get those over to our committee?
Certainly, we can have that arranged.
No change today.
Okay, thank you. Last month, of course, we saw this volatility with GameStop and AMC, and the stock started to rally. Everybody seemed to get involved, and one survey recently said that 30% of Americans purchased one of those viral stocks. That includes people like my nephew and his two friends who stayed up until 4 a.m. to see if they could get a piece of this action.
Oh, no.
So one of the most concerning pieces, though, of this whole episode is how many people really felt like That's what they needed to do to get ahead. To me, this just exemplifies the income inequality across America, and it's one that we
Which one of you are her nephew?
And I do appreciate the opportunity for retail investing. I want to make sure that it creates a good outcome, however, for the people who are using it. And right now, what I'm seeing is gambling on the stock market, and it's not a real solution to that income inequality. And I don't think we should pretend that it is. Just last June, when Hertz declared bankruptcy, after that, Robinhood was actively pushing the stock on its site. It was trending on Robinhood, and the promotion of that worthless stock, I don't think is good for investors. That's a gamble that they shouldn't have taken. That's just one example. But people having access to the stock market's nice, but if they don't have the money to invest, then really it's not democratization. And that's the real reason that 80% of the stock market's owned by 10% of the people. And of course, those are people or childcare or a car payment or whatever it is that's just keeping them going through their day to day.
Maybe it wasn't really her nephew that got burned.
You couldn't tell us what your client's rate of return is, but generally 99% of short-term traders underperform the market. So, Mr. Tenev, you say Robinhood's mission is to democratize finance. Is that correct?
That's correct, Congresswoman, yes.
Okay, so I want to ask you then, you've invested significantly in behavioral research, and just so you know, I own a digital design firm with my husband, so I'm familiar with what behavioral research can do for platforms and websites. And that behavioral research has really shaped how your app is designed. Is that correct?
Congresswoman, like many technology companies, we employ data scientists, user researchers, and designers to provide a better customer experience and understand our customers' needs.
So on the specifics, when people sign up, they get a scratch-off ticket to see what they get. Confetti falls every time they place an order. They get push notifications. They're encouraged to trade. If a friend signs up, they get a free stock, on and on. Why have you added specific gaming design elements to look like
It is true. It is very...
That encourages more frequent trading.
Congresswoman, as I mentioned earlier, we want to give people what they want in a responsible, accessible way. We don't believe in gamification. We know investing is serious, and that's why most of our customers are buy and hold. A very small percentage of our customers utilize margin.
Well, I appreciate that, but folks like my nephew actually aren't your customers. They're your product. Your customer's sitting right next to you, Mr. Griffin with Citadel. So you don't pay as much for index fund or Apple or anything like that. Your app to me shows me that you're really just trying to encourage more trades, which puts more money in your pocket, not helping people build equity through smarter investing. So I would ask you, Mr. Tenev, I'd ask two things. Who exactly do you believe you're democratizing finance for, and how do you plan to address these conflicts of interest?
Well, first of all, I believe in our business model, Congresswoman. I believe our business model has become the industry standard for a reason. It's because it's good for customers. It's led to the democratization of the market, and it works. And we're very proud to route to market makers on uniform terms without taking into account any of the payments that we generate from them in the routing, and based purely on the execution quality that we provide to our customers.
Mr. Style is recognized for 5 minutes. Thank you.
Harry Styles.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman, and thank you for holding today's hearing. I'm concerned about investors in the state of Wisconsin and across our country to make sure that they have access to the market, access that is fair to the big banks and the hedge funds and Wall Street. We've seen great improvements in access, the democratization in finance. And I'm concerned that these hearings are going to lead us down the path of additional regulations before we fully investigate the facts. It was stated earlier that may not be the case, and I'd like to have inserted into the record a
dude has a good hairline. I'll give him that.
Dated January 28th, titled "Gamestop Trades Show Need for More Regulation," Democrat says.
Without objection, such is the order.
Thank you. I think it'll be helpful for everyone to review that, with the concerns being that we're going to drift away from the democratization of our finance system. Also, a bit disappointed that we don't have representation in our first hearing here today from the SEC or the DTCC, especially in the early days of the Biden administration. I think that would be helpful, and hopefully we'll be able to have their participation in a future hearing.
Yeah, if Cindy would have led this whole thing, it would have been
first question,
really good.
Mr. Gabe Plotkin at Melvin Capital Management. There's obviously a lot of attention that came pouring in on a stock, GameStop, that you
know how long this is supposed to last for?
People were tweeting about it, things were building. Do you have any information as to uniquely why folks on Twitter and on Reddit and others uniquely targeted?
Who's this kid? Who's this kid that just hijacked NASA's stream from his house?
I think ultimately, I'm not sure kind of how the momentum built around that. There were certainly some signs, as we kind of diligenced after the fact. I mean, there were even website names bought, like, nasty things about our firm as far back as November. So I'm not sure kind of how it started, but I think ultimately they saw an opportunity with a very high short interest stock that a lot of
He's the
people
lead engineer.
Because it was a retail experience, and that's sort of the genesis of it.
Thank you very much. I'm going to shift gears over to Robinhood and Mr. Tenev, if I can. Is my colleague Mr. Gonzalez was talking about, at some point it became
somebody called me names online.
That additional collateral would likely be needed. How many of your customers owned GameStop stock or options on January 27th?
I don't have the exact numbers.
To suffice it to say, had it increased? Suffice it to say, had it increased dramatically over the days leading up to the 27th?
Yes, that's accurate.
Fair. And you saw additional order flow coming into this. Did you take any steps? Was it reasonable to believe that there would be additional capital requirements? And did you take any steps?
I gotta show up for my
internally or
for my one dude. Hey, Nathan's in the chat.
Clearing Corporation. To mitigate.
Oh no, I'm not upset at the things that are said in chat. It's nowhere near as nasty as
takoyaki again. We did. So on January 21st, we went to 100% market requirement for AMC, and that requires all purchases for those stocks to be fully paid for. So customers would have been able to use margin to buy those. So that
after 4 p.m., it doesn't count on the stream, boys.
And January
that one was free. I got you a whole stream without a mom joke.
But this was still insufficient ultimately as related.
You ever had takoyaki with
28th, is that correct?
Habanero sauce?
That's correct. The limiting margin was ultimately insufficient.
And is
not much. I only had like 800 in my TFSA. So
do you know any other brokerages?
I sold all my shares of Wells.
Limitations
and just bought Bitcoin.
Yes, I do, Congressman. I think that's an important question. Many brokerages put in place similar limitations on these securities.
The GameStop?
For the record, I've heard
it's not a debate, but like the live.
That this committee needs to further look into
it's pretty nutty,
is to the differential between what occurred under control at Robinhood and some of the other brokerages. I think it's a question we should fully investigate on this committee, make sure we have all the facts as we're moving forward. Could you detail, Mr. Tenev, your plans going forward as it relates to making sure that an event like this doesn't occur and that you have the foresight to prevent these late collateral?
Absolutely, Congressman. Thank you for
I actually don't
that
like it when the
question.
inside's that funny.
Certainly, the
additional
$3.4 billion helps provide a significant cushion. In addition, you could see that between Thursday and Friday, Robinhood replaced the PCO, which is a position closing only setting, with much more granular position limits.
Congressman Maxey.
No, man. Wait.
I'm sorry.
Please, the gentleman's time has expired. The voice that you heard had nothing to do with what you were saying. I think it was a mistake.
I only know this one guy
time has expired.
But he's watching
we'll move on to Mr. Caston.
I feel like it would be super easy to hack into this meeting.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you so much for witnesses.
I don't know. It says there's two people.
There's a whole bunch of themes in today's hearing, and I wonder if I can just tie a couple threads together that I think are relevant that have been.
No, not for me. I'm an idiot.
Yo, Nathan, how's the video quality?
Alex Kearns, who was 20 years old at the time,
it's not like HD, right?
Illinois, killed himself, largely.
It's not that great.
a bug in the.
Thanks for working
streaming
overtime.
off
Stock
like my
years,
MacBook
overtime
Pro.
pay.
I mean,
Said he
for a
owed
laptop, it's pretty good,
$730,000
but
that he did not have because of options positions that he thought canceled out but didn't appear to. He called the helpline. The helpline, of course, was not manned, as we've discussed. He sent several panicked emails, 3 to be precise, did not receive a response. Ultimately, there was a response in the email saying that, in fact, his positions were covered. But by that point, it was too late because he had taken his own life.
I saved this one. This one was really bad before.
This is a gentleman who was 20 years old. Under Illinois law, he was not allowed to buy a beer, but he was allowed to take on $730,000 in
You ate it.
positions and exposure that he did not have the liquidity to
I
cover.
told you. I put
Your mission, Mr.
this
Tennant, is to democratize finance, but the history of financial regulation is to protect
I think,
people.
yeah. Also,
like Alex
the
Kearns,
camera's not
from
good.
the system.
My friend
Joe
says
goes to
the
playing poker and he can't see
quality is like
where the fish
potato.
is at the table. You should leave the table because you're probably the fish. And
Probably
there's
not
a
time for a
tension
joke.
in business model between democratizing finance, which is a noble
I
cause,
think so.
and being a conduit to
Oh,
feed
let me
fish to
figure it
sharks.
out.
I want to cover a little bit of timeline. December 2019, Robinhood was assessed a $1.25 million fine by FINRA for failing to disclose
The
payment for
GoPro
order
just
flow
stream
agreements to your
YouTube
customers.
directly.
6 months after that, Alex Kearns committed suicide. 6 months after that, December 20,
I want these.
Robinhood paid a $65 million fine to the SEC for, among other things, failing to disclose payment for order flow agreements to your customers. There's a tension in your model. Now, along with that, according to your 606s, as been reported by CNBC,
What are you gonna make?
expect a higher
What
rate
kind of
for
food you
equity
making?
trades from payment for order flow of many of your
Are you making
competitors.
some
Excuse me,
news,
17
bro?
cents per 100 trades versus
Some
about 11
instant
cents for
news?
your competitors, even more over 50 cents per 100 trades for options. You would ask unanimous to enter the CNBC article into the record.
Without objection, such is in order.
Question for you, Mr. Benev. When did you start offering options on your platform?
Oh, so hot.
Thank you, Congressman Cassidy. And first, let me say,
I'm just looking for a date. We're tight on time. When did you start offering options?
options trading was offered starting in Q1 of 2018.
Okay, thank you. That's relevant because prior to 2018, your revenue grew basically linearly with user growth. Your revenue any year for your payment for order flow interview was about $10 per user per year. 2020, it got to $50 per user per year. So your revenue model went from growing revenue by growing users to growing revenue by growing revenue earned on the back of each user, consistent with taking on options. How many firms do you route options orders to, Mr. Tennant?
Congressman, we have 7 market makers. I can get back to you with the precise number for options under 7.
According to your 606 disclosures, you only list 4: Citadel, Susquehanna, Wolverine, and Morgan Stanley. Are there any others besides the ones listed in your 606 disclosures?
Oh shit.
If that's in the 606, Congressman, I'm sure it's accurate.
Okay, so do you route options trades to anyone?
This guy knows his shit.
Yeah, he knows his shit.
Currently, we have Congressman uniform payment for order flow arrangements with all of our market
So they route
makers.
through 9, but it's only
So
6
they
and
would
5.
He's probably reading, you're right, but still.
Same arrangements.
Compared to other people, it just sounds really smart.
So how do you ensure that you're getting best pricing if every single firm, you're ruling out anybody who is not paying you for the privilege to trade?
Congressman, we believe having uniform payment for order flow arrangements with all market makers ensures structurally that there is no conflict of interest because it prevents payment for order flow from being an input in decision making for where to route orders.
Okay, I'm almost out of time, but there is an innate conflict in your model. Let's imagine right now that we are today's version of Elon.
Guys, I'm not doing a hot tub stream. Stop it.
And I call your helpline now. Let's call and let's listen in the time we have remaining to what I'm going to hear on the other end of the phone.
Thanks for calling Robinhood. Please visit us at robinhood.com or on our app for support. If you have an urgent trading need, please make sure to include details of your order when reaching out. Thanks and have a great day.
Got him!
Wow, dude, that guy was not fucking around.
Thank you very much. I will now call on Mr. Gooden.
Whoa.
Is Mr. Gooden on the line?
Madam Chair, Mr. Gooden's in Texas and he's unavailable to.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. Then let us hear from,
Mr.
I believe
Gooden's in
it would
Texas.
be at this time, Mr. Timmons.
Thank you, Madam. Thank you, Madam Chair. It seems we're here today to try to find culpability in the events that transpired last month.
No,
I
Texas
seem
did
to
not secede,
spend a lot
guys.
of
That's
time
not why he's
about
not there.
capital requirements and the time it takes to execute these trades. So I'm going to focus my questions there. Mr. Tennant, you have repeatedly invoked capital requirements that both your company and your clearinghouse are required to abide by in order to explain the restriction of trading last month. My friend and colleague, Mr. Barr,
Jesus Christ, it's like
asked
if
you about
Bill
this earlier,
Byrne had
but I would like to hone in on this a little bit. Could you explain what specifically about the nature or volume of the trades being ordered by your customers caused these increased capital requirements to be triggered? And how did the level of collateral required compare to what
did the call mean?
Have to abide by?
That you can't talk to anybody for customer service on
Thank you
Robinhood.
for that question, Congressman. So to give you a sense for the increase, our capital requirements, our deposit requirements with NSCC from January 25th to January 28th, so a span of 3 days, increased tenfold.
What is the most your capital requirements have been prior to this event?
PySpark workflow.
I believe there was a table, Congressman, that I provided in my written testimony that had
one item,
the precise value at risk and special charges in the prior days.
Like all items.
Happy to
But
refer
obviously,
to that.
it never been.
Yes, guys, I had 2 red days in a row.
Now you have additional capital that you've raised, and so this should not happen again. Again, I think you referenced
It's been a while, but it
billion,
happens.
was the likelihood of this situation occurring. Is that correct?
That's
was a
correct,
big
and
red
that's
day.
not
Actually
a
down
number,
6% in the last 2 days.
that's actually a third-party industry number.
Are you aware of the origin of these capital requirements?
Sell it to our colleagues.
It's only 2
I
days.
do believe that these capital
Gotta stop looking
requirements,
short-term.
and
Think long-term.
specifically the
Yeah,
NSCC
I'm in
deposit, was spelled out in